I tell people that all the time. Like, they look at the stuff that we did and they think that it's super sexy. And what seems like the most fun, like you've gone through so much training and process by the time you get there that it's not fun while you're doing it. Very little of it is actually fun.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that that really checks that is skydiving for
Yeah,
sure.
that's a
You
great
like
example.
you can take something that is a bucket list item for most people and just make it miserable. Just make it the least amount of fun. It's like we're gonna go jump out of a plane, but you're gonna do it with all this stuff on oxygen with nods at night and enjoy. You're just
Yeah.
yeah.
Which even describing that, like people are listening and thinking, "Whoa, that sounds kind of fun." Like trust me, it's kind of not. Like
Yeah.
the fun has been taken out of it. These are stories of outdoor adventure and expert advice from folks with calloused hands. I'm James Nash, and this is the Six Ranch Podcast. The Six Ranch Podcast is brought to you by Sig Sauer. SIG is a leading provider and manufacturer of firearms, electro-optics, ammunition, air guns, and suppressors. For over 250 years, Sig Sauer Inc. has evolved and thrived by blending American ingenuity, German engineering, and Swiss precision. Today, Sig Sauer is synonymous with industry-leading quality and innovation, which has made it the brand of choice amongst the U.S. military, the global defense community, law enforcement, competitive shooters, hunters, and responsible citizens. Sig Sauer is also a premier provider of elite firearms instruction and tactical training at the Sig Sauer Academy located in New Hampshire. For more information about Sig Sauer and its complete line of products, visit sigsauer.com. What's the toughest wild animal that you think you could beat in a fight?
Oh, I don't know. That'd be a tough one. I'd be an extremely small black bear, like a nice sized cub.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. Yeah. And I think once a bear gets into that like 80 to 100-pound range, it's going to be a lot to handle.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about grown man strength plus claws and teeth. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Black bear cub.
Yeah. Small cub.
Small cub. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Michigan, South rural Michigan, by really more Amish than anything else around there. Corn land, soybeans, that kind of setting.
Did you come from a military family?
Yep. So my grandfather on my mom's side was Army, Korean War vet. My dad was a Marine. My sister's she's an Army officer. And then, I went to the Navy.
Okay. Did that embarrass your dad?
No, he actually asked me not to join the Marines. So it worked out pretty well. It's a funny story about how that all worked out too. But
well, tell it. I like stories.
So I wrestled in college for a year, and I had kind of a deal with my parents about scholarships and if I'd go to the military or college, and got some scholarships. So I went to college, and on the way home, I was like, college isn't for me. I'm going to go to the recruiting office. I went to go to the Marine recruiting office, and they were closed. And the Navy guy pops his head out. They're right next to each other. And he's like, "Looking to join the military?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And yeah, that was the end of that. I used to taking over there all the time, and the Navy and the Marine guy recruiters would bicker back and forth, and I'd had pull-up contests against the Marine recruits and stuff. It was pretty funny.
Nice. I think a lot of people's entry into military service is kind of similar with those recruit depots. And it's sort of like when you pull off an interstate and are like trying to figure out what fast food you're going to go to. It's like what's open, what's easy. And there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My little hometown one too was funny because it was like they were all on a line, and there was Marines, Navy, Air Force were in like these little offices, and then the Army had like this whole like terrace
Right.
it's this massive area. And you're just like, well, it's not even fair because they got like TVs and couches. And
So did you go in with the SEAL contract?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. I hadn't, that meeting before that, I had no clue anything about buds,
Yeah.
that stuff. So before I went in and talked to that recruiter, that was it.
My little brother Lars has got a buds contract right now, and he's leaving in 20 days.
Nice.
I don't think he knows what he's getting into yet, but what's the process like? A lot of people don't know. They think that they know stuff about SEALs, but they don't actually know. So what's the process like even to get there?
So I was kind of on a sped up timeline. When I went through that whole process, you do your initial PSD. If you basically, they kind of rack and stack you.
And the PST is what?
That was at the time like a 500-meter swim, no fins, breaststroke, side stroke, combat side stroke. And then you did push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. I don't remember the exact order.
Yeah.
And then a 1.5 mile run. To be competitive, I mean, you're basically sub 8 minutes on swim and run, and then, 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and 20, 25 pull-ups, I think is pretty much relatively competitive and, going to get you a contract. There's different spec war stuff, there's different qualification standards. And then from there you take, I don't know if they still do it or not, you take like, I think it's called the C-sort, which is like some mental aptitude test. And then they combine the two scores and they kind of figure out how likely you are to quit. Easiest way to put it. And then from there, they told me it was going to be about 1.5 years before I left. So I was rolled in college for another year and stuff. And then one of the guys dropped out and I was scores wise, I believe I was like next in line. So I got to jump in and left 2.5 months after that.
Okay.
Did the standard Navy boot camp. We were one of the first 800 divisions. So they actually had a spec war division. And of the 100 people in my boot camp, I think 80 of us had buds contracts. I think I had EOD, diver, SWIC in there too.
Okay.
So
what year is this?
This is 2010.
Okay, cool. That's about the time that I was getting into. I started into like December of 2009. So basically the same time frame. And then so you kind of have your specialized boot camp, and that was 8 or 10 weeks long, something like that.
Yeah, it's like 8 weeks. It's pretty much the exact same as Navy boot camp. We just got up like 3 hours earlier than everybody else and walked 2 miles to go swim and then back. But everything else is virtually the same.
That sleep portion of it is really hard. I don't think people understand what that deep fatigue is like. So how many hours of sleep do you think you were getting a night for those 8 weeks?
Not much at all, because there was a bunch of us that didn't think we were getting really good enough workouts. So we kind of do a little workout at night after lights were out. So I mean, maybe like 4 or 5 hours tops on a good night. And that's if they didn't bust back in and try to do a little raid on us or something like that.
Okay. So you pass that portion of it. Then what happens?
Then you go to pre-buds. I originally went through pre-buds with class 288. Actually broke both of my shins in pre-buds. Had shin splints that turned to stress fractures that turned into full-on fractures. So I was rolled for 16 weeks into the next, or the 290. Basically, if anybody understands the class structure, you got the test out of that. I don't remember. It's the same 5 core exercises, but I think it's like a 4 mile run, push up, sit up, pull up to the 2 mile swim with fins in a pool. So it's a little bit, harder, more extensive. And then once you pass that and you're in the top, whatever percentage of the class, you then get sent off to Coronado.
Yeah. I think I'd rather swim 10 miles with fins than 1 mile without them.
Oh yeah. I was one of the slowest swimmers. I mean, I was a wrestler in rural Michigan. I just sank. And the second I put fins on though, I could just cruise.
Yeah.
Went from being one of the slowest to one of the faster guys.
Yeah. I failed the Marine officer swim test 23 times. And if I failed it one more time, it was going to roll me back for an entire 6-month long course. And I managed to pass that one, but it was the same deal. I was a wrestler, really dense and I sank like crazy. And as soon as I added Kevlar and, a fake rifle and magazines and all the other bull crap that you have to swim with, it was hopeless. I was going down in a trail of tears and bubbles every time.
Yeah.
So, okay. So pre-buds, you busted both your shins. That's a thing that seems a bit like a vampire bite that's hard to come back from. Do they still give you problems?
Not really. And they kind of told me that when we were in pre-buds. So like you said, they know it's hard for people to come back from that. I think they were in LLD land. There were 9 of us, and they came in like 3 weeks before I left and dropped like 7 of them.
Yeah.
So those are just like, yeah, if you're not meeting our basically healing requirements, you're out.
Yeah.
I got to stick around, and the lady was basically like, once you get there, you're going to be running on soft sand, and it's going to be a lot easier on your shins, and you'll actually heal more. And once I left there, I really didn't have any issues until like my second deployment, when I was running like 25, 30 miles a week on concrete. And that's when they kind of bothered me again, but throughout buds, really no issues at all.
Gotcha. So how long is buds?
6 months.
Okay.
So, start to finish. And that's, the first 3 phases of the training plus in-dog.
Yep. And what was the hardest part of all of that for you?
Hardest part for me, like personally, I mean, every person's journey is a little bit different, but
Yeah.
The hardest part for me was 3rd phase, because it was like that you're so close to getting that carrot finally that's like on the end of the stick, but you're still just getting hammered 24/7 by these guys that just, you kind of have this feeling of I'm almost there, but it just never seems to never get there, because it's at 6 months for that like longevity of training where you're just like, man, I just want this to be over at this point. And it just never stops. It feels like,
yeah,
the physical stuff is, physical. If you don't think you're going to quit, you're not going to quit. If you let that little bit of doubt slip in, you're pretty much done for.
So when you start to recognize that doubt, how do you deal with it? Because it happens to everybody. Everybody gets that little tinge of fear, like maybe they're not good enough, or that they can't quite pull this off, or they're too tired, or, all the fear. Like how do you deal with it?
I really dealt with it by the guys, around you, your boat crew. I put a lot of pressure on myself to not let the other guys down.
Yeah.
And just to push through no matter what. So it takes the pressure off of you letting yourself down. And for me personally, how I'm motivated, it's more about not letting other people down. So I didn't want to let those dudes down, because you have a boat crew of 6 guys. 1 guy already quit, so you're down to 6. Now you quit. Well, now you're kind of screwing those other guys that are left over.
In the civilian world, shaming people is really unacceptable. But in the Marine Corps and what you're describing, man, that's the most powerful motivator we have, is that fear of shame, that you're going to let somebody else down. And that's an old thing, that goes all the way back to the Spartans. But I think some civilians could benefit from being afraid of shaming the people around them and shaming themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you make it through buds. At that point, are you a full grown SEAL, or do you have like a follow on specialty school?
No. So then you go into SQT, SEAL qualification training. That's when you actually get to learn some very, very basic tactics. You start getting introduced to things like CQC, some of the specialties. You go through SEER school, and that's another 6 months. So now you're into it for, at this point, like a year and a half already.
Yeah.
And after that, once you finish that, that's when you actually get your trident. But depending on who you ask and what era they're from, you're still not a SEAL until you get back from your first deployment.
Oh, really?
That's how it was my first deployment. They take your trident basically, or like you still have to earn it. You haven't earned anything yet. And then before that, I did 3 months of modern standard Arabic. So I went to language school for 3 months to learn Arabic.
Was that at Monterey?
No, we had our own course.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's cool. We were touring the SEAL base at Kodiak when I was up there hunting a couple of years ago. And I was there with an Army dude, and he came from a part of the Army that was really well funded. And I was wandering around looking at all this stuff, and it kind of had my jaw dropped. And he's like, what is it, man? It's like, it looks like everything they have works. Like, this is really nice.
Yeah.
That's a cool spot up there. Definitely
Yeah.
harsh conditions to train in, but that's the idea.
When I was there in February into March in like 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
And there's like a wicket where you do your like week living out in the bush survival training. And we had to go all the way down to we had to do it on the base because the seas were too high to get us to this island to train on.
Yeah.
And all the Coast Guard was taken out because they had like record winds. It was like -40, -50 degrees. And they were like, all right, go survive. We'll see in like a couple of days. It's like, sweet. Yeah. It was so cold that we would try to summit some mountains and we had to turn back because any exposed skin was just immediately starting to get that little bit of frost nip. And yeah, it was rough.
And it can happen fast, super fast. I got it really I think probably for the first time this year. I was coyote hunting on New Year's Eve and it was 23 below zero and we're out on snowmobiles, and about 11 o'clock at night, we decided to call it and head back. And I didn't make it very far. And I realized that I hadn't got my cheek all the way covered up with my balaclava. And I was like, whatever, it's, a 10-minute ride back, no big deal. And that torched it 10 minutes of, going 30 miles an hour at, 23 below zero. And when you start dropping down into the 40 below, 50 below range, for my money, it doesn't really change like how cold it feels. It just changes how long you can be out in it. And that exposed skin, it just freezes, you can't help it.
Yeah. Yeah. The hurt doesn't really change after that. It's just how long you can really bear it.
I lived in Norway for a year when I was in high school, and I wrestled while I was there. And it was 40 below zero for about 2 weeks. And 40 below zero Celsius is the same as 40 below Fahrenheit. So that's where those numbers intersect. But there were so many weird things that happened at that temperature. Like, my school bus hit a curb and the tire broke, like the rubber broke, and it's just a pile of things that really act differently. But again, like what you're saying, the feel of it doesn't really change. The hurt doesn't change. It's just exposure time. But when you're talking about spending multiple days out in that stuff, like the margin for error is incredibly low.
Yeah, we had a fire rip and we actually found where two trees had fallen over and the root wads were facing each other, kind of like this. And that's
nice.
We built our structure. And on the other side, we built just a raging fire so that root wad would get heated up.
Yeah.
Kind of radiate that heat. We got super lucky in finding a pretty good spot to hole up at. But
so when you're looking for a spot in a survival situation like that, how do you balance like, hey, we need to get to work and build a shelter right now versus we need to find the right place to do it in?
I mean, it's kind of 6 in one hand, half dozen the other, honestly. Like you can search until you find that perfect spot, but you're probably never going to find it.
Yeah.
It's risk reward. So if I'm somewhere and I see water and I see potentially a food source and something that's not ideal but meets the needs, that's probably going to be better because you're going to burn less calories going to get water, finding food than you are if you're the perfect spot, but you have to walk a mile to get water.
And then, it's a little bit different for most people in a survival situation versus in a military survival situation, because you also can't be obvious about where you're doing it, right? So you've got to pick a spot that isn't obvious to somebody who's going to be looking for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what's cool about that root wad spot, because that was kind of one of the main wicks, or boxes we had to check. And the way those trees were kind of facing, and we just kind of stacked up sticks against one of the root wads. It just looked like roots and, stuff in the mast right there. So it was actually pretty good for that.
This stuff's fun when you're looking back on it and thinking about it, but it's not very fun while you're doing it.
No, not at all. It is, but it's not at the same time.
Yeah.
The bonding is fun, but afterwards you definitely laugh about how much it sucks more than anything.
I tell people that all the time. Like, they look at the stuff that we did and they think that it's super sexy. And what seems like the most fun, like you've gone through so much training and process by the time you get there, that it's not fun while you're doing it. Very little of it is actually fun.
Yeah. I think the biggest one that, that really checks that is skydiving for sure.
Yeah, that's a great example.
You can take something that is a bucket list item for most people and just make it miserable. Just make it the least amount of fun. It's like, we're going to go jump out of a plane, but you're going to do it with all this stuff on oxygen with nods at night and enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, even describing that, like, people are listening and thinking, "Oh, that sounds kind of fun." Like, trust me, it's kind of not. Like,
Yeah,
the fun has been taken out of it.
fun when it's over for sure.
So what team did you end up on when you hit the fleet?
So I was on team 3 on the West Coast.
Okay. Were you ever there at the same time as Eli Crane?
Nope, he left right before I got there, I believe.
Okay. Have you met Eli? He's a great dude.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart. Okay. So where's team 3 based?
There was based out of Coronado, so we got to, our office looked straight on the ocean, so it's pretty awesome.
That's the good life.
Yeah, board shorts and flip flops for pretty much the uniform every day.
Yeah. And then what was your operational load like? Like, how often were you deploying?
So I checked into team 3 in, I want to say like September, October, and we deployed like August the following year. We had a kind of a condensed cycle. I got super lucky and got to go to a bunch of good schools as a new guy. I got to go to sniper school and a bunch of other schools. And so that really eats up that. And then you go into your unit level training, which is kind of where you start working in the enablers and start building your SOPs as a troop. And then you have professional development, which kind of gets eaten up real quick, and then you deploy. So kind of do that it's supposed to be like a 2-year cycle, but it never works out. I don't think quite 2 years.
Yeah. And how long were the deployments? My
first I did a 7-month, just under 7. My second one was right around 7. They're always supposed to be 6, but they always go over.
Sure. Yeah. And then you end up waiting on flights and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah.
Where did you deploy to?
My first deployment, I was in the Philippines. So I was all over the South Pacific. I had to live in pretty much a grass hut in the jungle for the first half of my deployment, training their special forces essentially, and kind of help, aiding in operations on there. And then the second half of that deployment, I kind of traveled all over doing JSETs for their special forces units. My second deployment, I went to the Middle East in the Korea. I was a Korea element. So we were out of Abu Dhabi, and there I traveled all over the place. I went to Tajikistan and just all of these cool places, really just doing JSETs. And then my third and fourth deployments, I was in Djibouti, and then I did a quick one to Afghanistan.
What made Afghanistan quick?
Just the nature of the mission, essentially.
Yeah, gotcha. Did you have a specialty within the team or a job, or was it kind of mission based since you'd gotten to go to so many different schools?
I was kind of our primary sniper. My kind of first deployment, our LPO was really our primary sniper, but because he was LPO, I kind of fit in. Our second one, I was a squad leader, so I was a assault team leader. So that kind of takes you out of the specialties for like breach or sniper comms. I was still sniper / point man. And then I actually went over and I was a dog handler for my next 2. So that was pretty much.
What kind of dog did you have?
I had, he was a half Malinois, half Shepherd, named Lucifer. He was a monster. Most working dogs are 65 pounds. He was about 95 pounds.
Did he have metal teeth?
No, he still had all his teeth. It was funny. He's actually missing like 2 teeth next to his canine. So we had these little buck teeth. And when those things got a hold of you, it sucked.
Yeah, he could auger his way through the bite suit sometimes.
Oh man, yeah. And him being that big, he learned through some bad decoys, which is somebody that's in a bite suit. And he learned through some bad decoys that he could use his weight and throw people on the ground. Yeah. When a dog gets all 4 paws on the ground, they're a lot more comfortable. And he would just chuck people around.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's somewhere north of the bear cub that you'd want to fight.
Yeah, I'd probably take the bear cub over Lou for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's actually sitting in my house right now.
Oh, that's great.
We retired on the same day, so I got to take him home with me. Now sleeps in bed every day with my 4-year-old and is just completely domesticated. It's pretty funny.
What do you do to be able to give a dog that switch where it might have to detect or bite somebody, but it's also got to be able to just chill out and be a pet?
I think it's really dog dependent. Lou was always kind of a super special dog, and anybody that listens that knows Lou, and they completely get it. Like he was a dog that you could go do a mission with, and then the next day be chilling and sitting in the team room with you, no problem. As long as you didn't try to take his Kong from him, you're pretty safe.
Okay.
Or if that popped out, got in the way of the chasing velociraptor behind the Kong. But yeah, he was just super, super good about that. There's kind of different mentalities, I think, between handlers, old school, new school, a bunch of different approaches to it. But I socialized him a lot with the guys, but I also allowed him to kind of be in those situations with the guys, but then also be decompressing with them at the same time, where most people keep their dogs in a crate or don't really get them around the team room. They don't get to really see that. They don't get to see that. It's when the guys are here, it's not always on or go time. And he had a switch where he was very ball driven. So he was super eager to please.
Yeah.
He was all about the commands, all about making me happy and doing what I wanted him to do sometimes. But, so I think it's super dog dependent, because you get some dogs that they're just jerks. They'll bite you just to bite you. But and those dogs are just, you can't really do those kind of things with them. But
did you think that it was pretty valuable to have a dog for the type of missions you were doing?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people too that owe their lives to the canine units, and those dogs they do a ton, and they lay their lives down for their teammates just as much as the other way around. And that unit's super tight knit. Yeah, their dogs they can smell things that humans obviously will never detect. So it's definitely a super valuable asset. And I think as technology is advancing, the people who want to be more technology driven are kind of getting away from them a little bit more. But technology, I don't think will ever be able to completely replace an animal that can be utilized as a tool like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I don't think people give enough credit to is the type of cohesion that comes from just having a dog around. We only did one mission, I think, that an adjacent force had a dog that I can remember. I forget a lot, but that dog was tactically worthless. I don't think he'd ever found a bomb in his life, but it was like the one thing that everybody could agree on. And it was so great just to have a dog around. And yeah, he rode around up on the turret of my tank. He was up on the gun mantle, and my Marines gave him a set of goggles and made a little cape for him, and it was hilarious, but such a huge morale booster just to have a dog there. And then if you have a dog that can actually be good at its job, like that's a huge force multiplier.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it makes everybody, a little piece of home, because you don't typically get that on deployments. And those dogs are that little comfort item, kind of.
When did you get out of the Navy?
I got out. I was medically retired in 2018.
Okay, what happened?
Skydiving.
Really?
Yeah. I was in a skydiving accident, nighttime, downwind landing, folded in half forward. Didn't know it at the time, because I actually have a scar going all the way across my lip here, where I put my teeth through my face, essentially. So I got up, looked at my nods. It was all red. I was like, why is it red? It's like, oh, there's blood everywhere. And then kind of hurt, because I just got smashed into the ground going probably 35, 40 miles an hour. Went back, got my face stitched up. Body was sore. Didn't think really anything of it. And then come to find out, like 6 months later, I had 2 crushed vertebrae in my back. They're wedge compression fractures. So it essentially took the rectangles and turned them into triangles in my L1 and L2, which then, because I didn't really know about it, healed incorrectly and healed correctly. And then just radiated down, just straightened my spine, essentially, whereas it healed. Degenerative disc disease, spondylolisthesis. I have a bunch of facet nerve issues. And then I was 26 at the time. So they're basically like, yeah, we're not going to fuse the entire lower back of a 26-year-old, because you do that. And then from there, it's just fusion. And then you can only do that so many times and still be a functioning human.
So you're just going to have to ride the pain train until you're old enough or technology comes along.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal.
That sucks. It's a bad place to be. A lot of
Yeah,
people are in that position.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it happens a lot. I mean, that's what's crazy about, that line of work is the spinal doctor we had. He's one of the best. And to have somebody like that who sees those daily, just be like, yeah, man, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, like you're effed. You're
Yeah.
done for. You
Yeah.
can't keep doing this.
Yeah. How's your transition been to being a civilian?
It's been good. When I first got out, it sucked. Like I said, that brotherhood that you build, losing that, it's really hard. And then you kind of see they're still your friends that are still in are still out doing the things that you love doing. And I left with, because didn't really leave fully on my own terms. I left with goals and stuff on the table that I wish I could have hit, but I didn't. But once I got past that, that was not bad.
And you're coaching wrestling now.
Yeah, I help. Yeah, my son's 4 and he just got into wrestling, and I kind of help coach the other 4-year-olds, which is want to rip your hair out sometimes, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
He's really liking it, and the last tournament he did, it really started to click, and he really started to have fun. Which 4-year-olds wrestling, they just base out, they go out there, hug each other, and the first one to fall over is basically the winner. But
yeah, I coached a lot of little kids wrestling, and I think first graders are the best, man. First graders, second graders, they can start to learn and get it, and they don't really fight you on stuff. They're excited about it, and then it kind of goes downhill until they turn to be like juniors and seniors in high school.
yeah, I could definitely see that.
What weight did you wrestle?
I wrestled, let's see, 135. Well, it's funny. I wrestled 167 my 8th grade year, and then I wrestled 135 my freshman year.
Yeah.
And then 145, and then my junior and senior, I wrestled 152.
Were you cutting a lot of weight every year?
Not my first 2 years. My junior year, I walked around, I was like 160. I was super lean. And then my senior year, I walked around at like 170. So I cut a lot my senior year, and that really sucked.
Yeah. That was my big deterrent when I was looking at wrestling, for the military academies after college, is I was over dieting. I'd cut weight hard basically since like 6th and 7th grade. And I was just over it, man.
Yeah.
I would eat, I'd eat a little bit after weigh-in on Friday. I'd eat everything I could after weigh-in on Saturday. And then by Wednesday night, I was done. I wouldn't eat or drink water again until I was weighed in. And man, it was just brutal. I was losing 40 pounds, 35 pounds between football and wrestling every year. And I was guiding and cowboying and stuff like that during the summer. So I was just a big guy, and I really shouldn't have been doing that. There was a weird culture, and I don't know if it's in every state, but it certainly was here in Oregon, about just needing to cut weight like crazy and find those lower weight brackets for some reason. And I wish I would have just wrestled heavier, wrestled 71 or 89 and just been happy.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Absolutely. And I'll definitely push my son to not cut weight, or I wasn't pushing myself, but like you said, it was the culture, and you just wanted to be the lightest because you thought you could be the strongest, but then you're just drained anyway. So it really didn't matter.
Yeah. But you're also super mad because you haven't, had anything to eat for a few days.
Yeah.
And anger in wrestling can be kind of helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Where are you working these days?
So I started with some of my business partners, a company called Norden Outdoors and Norden Knives. It's called Norden, but they're split into 2 divisions. So my partner who we had on a couple weeks ago at the Hunt Expo, Seth, and then Brandon, and then Josh Fry from the knife side. He's our bladesmith. We kind of all partnered up and created this outdoor soft goods / knife company.
It seems like we're in the golden age of like a hybrid commercial / custom knife. Like there's some companies out there that are doing really well with it. what's your guys' take on it? I mean, a knife is a super old tool. I was researching something on it a while ago, and I think it was almost like 10,000 years between the oldest evidence of using a knife and the first evidence of using a fire to cook meat. So we've been cutting stuff for a lot longer than we've even been cooking it. And I don't know what's new, what's changing. Like, how do you come up with such a simple thing that's different from everybody else?
I think it's really one, it's personal brand and kind of what flair you put on it. Our whole design philosophy from Knives and Outdoors is making things extremely modular. And so you can create it to what you want it to be used for. So we try to not build in too many features to everything that kind of pigeonholes you into one use or, one setup to run it. So I think that's one thing that really helps. Instead of you as a brand putting your flair on it, is allowing people to kind of do their thing with it. And then, the second side of that is knives, like you said, or everybody kind of has been using them forever. And there's all these people that do different things. So it's a combination of the steels with handle material, with how that handle material is attached, what kind of sheath you use, what you're using to hold that sheath on with. It's all personal preference, but there's all a reason behind it. And each different thing speaks to a different audience.
The sheath is an underlooked part of the program, I think. Kydex has done wonderful things for a lot of people, but it gets short-stepped a lot of times too. What's your take on knife sheaths?
We do all Kydex, and we kind of do three different delivery methods, I guess. We do a taco, we do kind of a pancake style. So we have one piece that's folded over, so you get a super lightweight, minimalist, basically a blade cover with a thumb break on it. So instead of it pinching on the blade, it holds around that bottom of the blade. So it gives you really good retention. You use that thumb to break the seal. How about the next one for like our middle line of size-wise? We use a pancake style. That's same thing. We use grommets so you can change everything up. We use, Chicago style screws so you can move straps around, take them off, put it in your pack or put a blade tack or any type of attachment hardware you want on it. And then we take it one step farther with our larger line knives, and we do more of like a belt drop because it's kind of a longer blade to wear on your belt, scout style or something like that. So those are all made out of Kydex. I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy, so I like leather myself too. But Kydex, like you said, you're talking about weight, strength, resistance to the elements. Really, I don't think you can beat Kydex when it comes to all those things.
Oh, it's wonderful stuff. I don't know that leather would really exist for holsters in any form if Kydex had come along first.
Definitely.
But like I still use a leather holster for my 365, but it's got some plastic components on the inside for retention on the trigger guard and stuff like that. It's I don't know. Holsters are they're so personal and they're so important, because if it doesn't work well and it's not convenient and suited for what you're doing, then you're not going to bring the thing with you. Whether it's a knife or a gun or a hatchet or whatever else, you're just not going to do it if that holster doesn't function correctly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me about knife steel a little bit.
I'm definitely not the expert. That'd be Josh. But right now we went from a Nitro V, which is a really good, strong stainless steel, to CPM 3V, which is made in the US. I personally, just from using them, I think my personal ascent, I have the same one I've used for all season. And I think I did last year, 4 elk, 3 deer and a bear, and never touched it to a stone or a grinder, just a ceramic honing rod. I kept it in my pocket. When I start to feel that blade catch a little bit, I just pull it out, do 2 or 3 swipes on each side and just keep going. I think that's what's nice about those harder steels is, that thing is, and the care on it is pretty minimal. We have stonewash and DLC. So we put a coating on the CPM 3V, a DLC coating, and, the corrosion resistance is awesome. And then, like I said, that thing just stays hair puffing sharp with very little effort, as long as you keep it that way. You don't let it get too dull. And that's when it could potentially, you have to work it more on a stone or a grinder, which is why we have our return policy where or not return policy, but we call it the spot treatment. So if there's any issues with your knife, you let it get too dull, you can't get it sharp, you send it back to us. We put a new edge on it for you for free and send it back to you.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Sharpen once, hone forever is
Yeah.
is some advice that a lot of folks could benefit from, and sometimes including myself. Like I'll be going along and then realize that I let a knife get dull. And if it's a really hard steel, it's like, okay, now I've got some sure enough work to do to get this thing right again. I love knives. I don't know. I've always loved knives. Loved knives when I was a little kid. Love knives now. I don't see that changing at any time. I think that's just part of being a guy.
Yeah. They're such a useful tool. I mean, you can use them for anything, really. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a point in my life where I haven't had a knife from when I was like 4 years old. And my dad gave me my first little like Swiss Army knife with the toothpick and the fingernail clippers on it, to when I was in the teams carrying a Winkler for 9 years almost.
Yeah.
You always just have a knife with you no matter what. I mean, that was what we were trained to do.
Yeah. So you had a Winkler tomahawk or Winkler knife?
A Winkler knife. I had both, but I carried a Winkler knife for this kind of sad story. I got it as a new guy. Had it all the way through, and then when I was guiding in the Bob last summer or 2 summers ago, I jumped up on my horse and just had a scout carry my back and had a leather sheath, and reached back, just touch point, just to see if it was still there, and it was gone. I searched for hours and never found it. So some
That
lucky
sucks.
SOB probably got one found on the trail somewhere.
Probably don't know what they have either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I use a little axe for game processing that a local guy here made for me, and I can skin and gut and quarter and everything with it. I'm not gonna do it on like some deep hardcore backcountry hunt because the thing's heavy and I don't necessarily need it. But if I'm hunting elk, or like I took it moose hunting last year, it's a great tool. I think that's a really underrated cutting tool for hunters, is having a really good axe or hatchet or tomahawk, whatever. It gets a little bit nebulous which word you want to use, but
Yeah.
good tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else does Norden do?
So that's kind of the knife side. The soft goods side is we kind of broke it up into 3 divisions. So we have hunting, fishing, and defense. So we kind of try to use it to leverage everybody's backgrounds. So I was a hunting and fishing guide, and then did a little bit with tactical stuff. You have Seth, who's obviously a pretty big shooter and does a lot of stuff with that. And then we kind of bring everybody's expertise together to develop different systems for each of those, and then systems that can be utilized in all of those. Like it's always a thing when you're in the military, it's everything should have more than one use. And I really try to bring that forward when we're designing stuff and when we're working on things. Like we developed a chest rig system that we call the UCR, Universal Chest Rig, because I'm not really clever with names or anything like that. So just keep it, just say what it is,
Give it an acronym.
Yeah, give it an acronym. And it's kind of a cool system because when I was guiding, I had this issue of I had my fly fishing gear, I had my chest holster, I had my bino pouch, I had my packs, and none of them really worked well together because everything was always kind of an afterthought. It wasn't like, let's design this as a feature, as in how can we add this to this? So we kind of went backwards and pulled inspiration from all of our experiences and came up with a system where it's a pouch that you can then remove the back from and put on your fly fishing rig, remove the back, take that off, put on a micro chest rig for carrying 3AR mags and going to the range with. And we were able to do that. We actually patented the system, or it's patent pending, the system to do it. And we use different things like rotating buckles to make it so you don't have those friction points with straight pull buckles that you get. These systems move with you and they stay close to your body. And the material choices we use is a lot different than what other people are using. And we're kind of trying to expand upon that. And we just launched that actually at the Hunt Expo, and we had unbelievable feedback. Like I was really nervous going into it because you're bringing something to the table that is brand new that nobody else is doing. So you always, we designed it and tested it for a year in a bubble up here, and then we took it there, and the feedback was unbelievable on it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I got to see a little bit of that with Seth, but I didn't get to look into it close enough. I, of course, carry a pistol with me pretty much regardless. And I love a chest harness. I've used a few different ones. I still think that there's work to be done out there. It's not perfect yet, but I also haven't got to try yours. So I need to put that on my list of things to do. And yeah, Seth is a great guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. I mean, as far as Army guys go, he's pretty cool, pretty solid.
Yeah, it's not too bad. There's another Navy guy that works here, so the banter's decently high back and forth. But
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. So where can people learn more about Norden and both your knife and soft goods stuff?
So we're on pretty much all the major social platforms. We actually had to separate Knives and Outdoors. So you go to at Norden Knives for knives, at Norden Outdoors for outdoors. We had to do that for advertising purposes. You can't run an ad or promote a post or do anything like that to reach a larger audience with knives, but you can do that with soft goods.
Yeah.
So by keeping them separate, it allowed us to kind of grow them independently, but at the same time. And then if for some reason someday we get removed, knives get removed from social media, Outdoors is still intact. And then the same thing for the websites. So it's NordenOutdoors.com and then NordenKnives.com.
Okay.
And it's the same thing. Like if you run an ad and it leads back to a website that sells a knife, no bueno. So
yeah, gotcha.
It really gets you. Yeah.
That's so frustrating. So frustrating.
It's extremely frustrating. We're also on YouTube too. We're trying to do some more educational stuff, get stuff about our system, and then just, we hunt 24/7. So we live in Northwest Montana. So pretty much every day after work, the weekends, when hunting season rolls around, it's a ghost town. So
yeah,
we're up in the mountains. So we're trying to do some more stuff for education and filming and showing people kind of our lifestyle up here.
Okay. Well, that's great. And you're in a wonderful part of the country. I've done quite a bit of bear hunting up there and a bit of fishing, and I love it. You're in a good spot. I'm glad you're there.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. We moved here. I retired, and then 3 days later we were here. I had the vehicle loaded up, ready to roll. Got signed my paper, got in the truck, and drove straight here. And spent the next 6 months in the Bob Marshall, and probably will never leave. It's awesome.
Yeah, good for you. Well, man, thank you very much for your time. All jokes aside, thank you very much for what you've done for our country. Proud of you. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, same to you.
And it's fun. It's fun to kind of hear the process. There's a lot that goes into a human before they become operational, whether they're a soldier or an airman or a SEAL or whatever. And that's part of it that doesn't really get talked about. I think when most people see it, they think of like boot camp and then somebody hands you a rifle and then you're operational. It's like, no, it's years. It's years of really, really taxing training before you're ever operational. And that's why we're good at it, because we put a lot into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes and the non-sexy stuff that goes into it that is what really makes it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Take care.
Yeah, nice one.
So I found this old ad, and there's like dudes dressed up like construction workers, and a guy's got a jackhammer, and there's a crane, and they're moving all these big steel beams and stuff.
Aladdin Stanley Thermos. Stanley, the tough, all steel thermos bottle that's completely dependable.
They're showing this thermos like falling off this building and hitting all this other construction stuff.
And built to take a pounding year after year. Get the top one.
Oh, it lands in a wheelbarrow. The guy grabs it out of the wheelbarrow. Now he's going to pour himself a cup of coffee. I love these cheesy old ads. And most of the time, like, they're lying to us, right? That's most of what marketing used to be, was just like telling a lie, or at least telling a version of a lie that made you think that you needed this thing. But I'll tell you what, when it's cold out like it is right now, the only way to keep liquid and not freezing in your pack is by putting it in something that's insulated. So packing a thermos in the wintertime is really smart, whether it's for a hot beverage like coffee or if you just want to bring some water with you, which is a really important thing if you're going to be out adventuring around in this snow that we've got all over the country. And I think you should be, because it's a great time of year to get out and about. This is both a comfort and a safety thing. If you want to get something from Stanley, which I encourage you to do, you can use the discount code 6RANCH. That's the number 6 in the word ranch, and that'll get you 25% off of just about anything on their website. I encourage you to do that. They're great supporters of the show and great supporters of this audience. And I love you guys. So stay warm out there. Have a nice warm drink, and make sure you're drinking it out of a Stanley product. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share the show with a friend. You can also rate the podcast and leave a review. Your support allows me to keep doing what I love, which is meeting incredible folks and sharing their stories with you. For more content and photos, follow the show on Instagram at 6Ranch Podcast or me at 6Ranch Outfitters. This episode was produced by Emily Brannigan, with original music written and performed by Justin Hay. Art for the 6Ranch Podcast was created by John Chatelain and digitized by Celia Christofferson. Tune in every Monday for a brand new episode of the 6Ranch Podcast. I'll catch you next week.